It's with sadness today that I contemplate the tragedy that has happened in France, in Paris. And as I was working through some feelings about it, I thought, okay, I'm going to use this opportunity to lay some thoughts down. Now, this girl I had already drawn in. I was actually helping my friend Lisa Swank with a 3/4 profile, and I had started sketching a face in and thought, oh, I'll just finish the face. So I just decided that I would do something about putting my thoughts onto paper for this process, because honestly it's so confusing to those of us that love peace, and it's such a tragic occurrence. And I just want to take this time to say that not only has there been tragedies in Paris, but there's been tragedies in Israel and tragedies around the place with car bombings in Baghdad, you know, and there's a great loss of life everywhere, and we shouldn't just focus on France. But France, it was just callous and coordinated and smacked of evil. And I, for one, just reacted with that and wanted to do something to process my feelings on it and my sadness. So I realised that I've gotten the French flag backwards. I kind of didn't think about it. I really wanted to start with red at the bottom, the hot, from a hot-headedness, and then go to the blue at the top for a cooler thought process around her head. So that's why I did the colours the way I did. But I apologise to those of you that think about the detail of these things, and I understand. This red, I'm just using a makeup sponge here, and I wanted that really quite soft look, and I used one side with the red and one side with the white, and of course they mix together. But the thing with these sorts of transitions was the first layer that I laid down was red with an awful lot of white in it, and with this same process with the blue, I've started with the darker and then gone and transitioned into the light, and then used a lot of white in the middle. So I'm just using my Americana sort of facial palette that I got from Jane Davenport. And this girl, I'm laying down some shadows first, and I'm just going to say here that for this process, you know what, the Delusions paper is not brilliant for this. And this time round I sort of defined, you can see the light pencil marks, I really defined her cheeks a lot more, and decided that I would lay down those heavy layers first than rather just a normal flesh layer. So you can see that I'm just really blotting in a lot of those heavy tones there, and I wanted to make sure that I had the real planes of the face. And now I'm just going to go over the whole lot with my Santa's Flesh in Americana paints, and I'm going to leave complete white spots there. So you can see the white spots that I'm leaving, more on the right side because the light's coming from that side, but really leaving a lot of white spots there. Because when you layer white over the top of dark, it really makes an impact and doesn't look nearly as white. But when you put white over white paper, it looks truly white. And so I've started changing a little bit the way that I'm doing skin tones, just mixing it up a little bit and showing you a different way of actually achieving that. So you can see here that I'm even just tiny scrubs over that white part there, but I'm really leaving those parts white. And now I'm adding some white in to just cement that down, and adding those highlights in. Which I really wanted to do at this point because, you know, it's all about layering. And you get your whites looking really quite white because they're the shiny parts of the face that the light has shown up. And we add the highlights in on the eyebrows and every other part, and we just keep adding those in. And I also add in flesh again. I'm adding in like a real peach because I wanted a peach sort of undercolour on her cheeks. You can see in the neck it's looking significantly darker, because if the light's shining that way and she's got hair there, then there's going to be a greater delineation between her face and her neck. Her face comes out further from her neck is going to be in shadow. So you can see now with the peach, I'm going in with the peach, and I wanted to really kind of add some white back into that and leave that white star there, and then add the white back in again. You can just see, just really enforcing up those areas, making them stand out. And I kind of almost at this point wanted to have it looking quite painterly, but I decided that I wouldn't. But what you'll see is that I've overworked the paper, and you wouldn't think that it would start down near the left hand side of the lips, but I've overworked the paper and I needed to sort that out again. So I just really needed to be able to see how that one would work. I was very disappointed in the Delusions paper, and it makes me think that to be able to stop that kind of pilling occurring in the future, maybe seal your drawing with a whole layer of matte medium, and that means that when you're scrubbing the matte medium and you're not scrubbing the paper. In this case it would have worked wonders, I think. And I'm almost about finished with her face right now. I kind of just want to add in a little bit more with a water brush so that I can dilute the colours, but essentially just wanting to lighten up that right side of the face that the sun is hitting, or the light is hitting from, and add in some highlights. And then I'm going to start on the hair. I started rubbing at the paper here, and this is where you see that it pills. I was then dismayed that the layer upon layer came off, and then thought to myself, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with this? Because it looked like she had a massive hole in her face. And I'm sitting here going, oh no, I ruined the entire page. So then I decided that I would peel off all those layers and then paint over the top of it and seal it and leave it, and use the paintbrush to take any peeled paper that had come off, and then reset with a flat brush in flesh tones over the top without scrubbing so much. And that seemed to have saved the page. But she does have a very thin point in that page there, and at this point I've gotten some matte medium, and I've just gone over and sealed the whole lot with matte medium. So any other reworking that I've done of the face after this point is over the top of matte medium. And I decided, you know, with some of on this Delusions paper from now on, using similar techniques, I'm actually going to seal my drawings with matte medium, because I go over my pencil marks with paints or markers anyway, and I decided that, you know, it was worth preserving. So now I'm starting on the hair, and I wanted red hair, but I also put some it's a beautiful colour that I often use to give a really warm tone in my faces, and it's in the Matisse range and it's called Australian Sienna, and it's almost it's like a sienna, but it's translucent, and I think it adds a little bit to the Liquitex Basics red that I'm using here, and I found that was a lot of fun to use together. I often use those two together to give warm and highlights and lowlights. So I love painting the hair, and here I'm just adding in the lighter Australian sienna, and then using a little bit of white and blending it in for the highlights. And you might think, oh, that looks quite full on at this point, but I will paint over it. It's like an underpainting. And I'm just using a Prismacolor pencil, and this is in indigo blue, so it's not a black. And I just wanted to really square up some of those features that were only in graphite at that point. And I'm going to work on the eyes. And I used a couple of markers for the eyes. I used a very kind of limey colour in a Crayola, and then I went over that with a aquamarine in a Crayola. So I just used some Crayola markers. Didn't really water brush them a little bit, just did a little bit to blend, and then I used a black marker for the irises. Left some of the whites because I want the whites to be truly white. And I didn't even go over these eyes with Prisma pencils. I often do, just to give them that variegated look that is so common to the iris. I just kind of left them because I didn't want her eyes to be the main feature of the whole face. I kind of wanted everything to kind of blend in together, and so that's how I worked there. And I just wanted to then cement in those features and make sure that I used like a sketchy kind of I've got my Epic pen from Jane Davenport that I use quite a bit here, and I just really wanted to have some thin lines and some heavy. Also using a what's the pen I'm using to actually put in some of those dark brown details? It's a water pen. It's my Sakura water pens. There we go. The Koi colouring brush pens, and I put her eyebrows in with that, put the features of her nose without using black because it's you know, like a light kind of tan chocolate. And so now I'm covering over some of that white with the Australian sienna because I want to give the highlights, and I'm going to go over this again with red to just blend them all in. So it doesn't just look like she's got red clip-ins in her hair. And then I'm reasonably happy with her, and I just add in a little bit more white in the highlights. And then I'm going to sit down and do my thoughts. And honestly, I sat down and just wrote down what was swirling through my mind as I was doing this page and what had prompted me to do it in the first place. And that was that I was praying for the people of France, that I wanted to make sure that everything they'd gone through was not in vain, that they should allow God's justice to reign, that the cycle of violence will only continue with the retaliation and no mercy. And I also think very much so that there's very strong ideology coming against the whole world with ISIS, and they obviously, ISIL or ISIS, have such a confidence in their ability to just create a caliphate in the whole world, and it's distressing that the very fabric of our lives and that which we hold dear is being attacked here by a group that wants to take all of those freedoms away. And that is something that I don't believe that the world should allow. And I also don't believe that the very complex situation that's happening in the Mediterranean and in the Middle East can be easily solved either. But I do know that the same approaches that we've used in the past in Iraq and Afghanistan have not worked. They've not worked. They've not won any of the war on terror. And so something different needs to be thought about here, and different responses. And that's kind of really what my thoughts are on that one. And then I made a declaration here that I wanted to live my life enjoying every moment and to not stop. And the Paris people as well, I see on the news this morning, are doing the same thing, to not allow this to take away their freedom, to not place themselves in a cage, to not change the way that they live their lives because of the evil that's happened here, but to go on and be amazing and continue on living our lives with the freedom of expression that we have and the freedom to choose our path in life and to be ourselves. Can you imagine if we lived in a society where I couldn't do this? I couldn't upload to YouTube and I had no internet. It would just be one of those situations where the creativity would be squandered, and the giftings of the people in that part of the world are being squandered. Their education is being squandered. What they bring to this life is being squandered. The rest of this video is essentially me tweaking the finer points of the face and the hair and making sure that I'm happy with the final outcome. And I also want to say that I date a lot of my pages now, and I dated this one around the time that the day that's occurred, and I wanted to be sure that it marked for me my thoughts and emotions on that day at that time. And our art journals are often an expression of like a diary. I use mine like a diary, and the thoughts and the feelings that I experience and that which I want to put in my journals, I often am thinking and experiencing those days, and I don't necessarily want to write everything down, although sometimes in this case I've done a combination of the two. But I do want that people coming to me afterwards or reading my journals after know what happened and have a reference for what happened, and it kind of bears mark to the history of the event, and that's kind of what I was looking for here. So I encourage you to use this medium to express your feelings and to work through things that you're going through in your everyday life, and it's like your diary. And learn something new, it keeps you young.